Escape!
You are located on a remote plantation in the crawling Amazon jungle, and an immense army of ravenous ants is closing in on you, swarming in to eat you alive. A deadly black army from which there is no escape.
Escape, designed to free you from the four walls of today for a half hour of high adventure.
Tonight, at the request of many of our listeners, we bring you a repeat performance of one of the most gripping escape stories. Tonight, we escape to the Amazon jungle and to a creeping, crawling terror, as Carl Stephenson told it in his famous story, Leiningen versus the Ants.
I first met Leiningen while performing my duty as district commissioner. As my boat neared his plantation landing, I saw him upon the riverbank regarding me with mild interest. A great hulk of a man with bristling gray hair, bulky nose, and pale eyes. His entire appearance somehow suggested an aging and shabby eagle. He escorted me to the terrace and had drinks brought. I came quickly to the point of my visit and issued my warning. Leiningen puffed placidly at a huge cigar and listened as I said, "And unless they alter their course, and there's no reason why they should, they'll reach your plantation in 2 days at the latest."
Uh-huh. Well, Commissioner, it was decent of you paddling all this way just to give me the tip. But a herd of crocodiles couldn't drive me from this plantation of mine.
No, you do not understand at all. These aren't creatures you can fight. They're an elemental force, a gigantic catastrophe. 10 miles long, 2 miles wide. Ants, nothing but ants. And each one as big as your thumb. Unless you clear out at once, there'll be nothing left of you but a skeleton picked as clean as your own plantation will be.
I'm not an old woman, Commissioner. I'm not going to make a run for it just because trouble's on the way.
But it isn't just trouble.
And don't think I'm the kind of fathead who tries to beat off lightning with my fists, either. I've got a better weapon, Commissioner. Intelligence. With me, the brain isn't just a second appendix. I know what it's there for.
But can't I make you understand the hideous...
Commissioner, all my life I have lived by one motto. The human brain needs only to become fully aware of its power to conquer even the elements.
Leiningen, you are a madman. I've done my best. Your obstinacy is endangering not only your own life, but the lives of your 400 workers. You don't know these ants. I tell you, you do not know these ants. But Leiningen merely sat there, puffing at his cigar and regarding me with a sardonic grin, and I knew it was hopeless. As I boarded my launch and cast off, I turned to look once more at this madman who calmly intended to defy one of the world's greatest scourges. I felt a sudden resentment toward him, yet with it was something else. I had never met a man like that, and I could not help
wondering. I stood on the bank of the river
was...
watching the commissioner's launch until it rounded a bend and was lost to sight. There was a strange look in the commissioner's eyes as he stood on the deck staring back at me. Clearly, he thought me insane. Well, he would not have been the first to think so. But I, Leiningen, knew my own powers. I was sure of myself. I knew that intelligence directed aright always makes man the master of his fate. That night, I called my 400 Indian workers together in the front of the plantation house. I saw their faces go ashen with terror as I told them the ants were coming. Watched them as they milled around muttering. I said nothing more to them. Finally, one of the men stepped forward. Bloss, the foreman.
We have worked hard here for these 3 years, all of us. We have built the finest plantation in this district. We all share in it. It has been a home for all of us and our families. Now the ants come.
So?
Those ditches we dug last year, the pipe we put in the ground, that was for the ants?
That was for the ants.
If we moved our families across the river, the ants could not reach them?
That's right. And you?
The ants are mighty. We know what they can do. All of us think that you are more mighty. We will stay with you and fight against the ants.
I knew that the men would give me that answer. I'd counted on it. Suddenly, I thought of the commissioner. I'd wondered what he would say at such unquestioning confidence. Would he still think I was insane?
Oh, that night.
At least I knew he was not
Livingston
soon to
out
forget.
in my mind. One man who calmly evaluated his chances against a deadly menace, coolly decided he could win, and was willing to stake his life on it, to risk a horrible death for it. It was terrifying, and yet it was fascinating. When dawn came, I sent for my assistant. Together we went to the huge map on the district which hung from a wall of my office. What was the last reported position of the ants?
Up here, about 70 miles above this fork in the river.
So, traveling southeast.
Yes.
Directly toward Leiningen.
Toward whom, sir?
That plantation at the bend in the river belongs to a man named Leiningen.
Oh.
When would you say the ants will reach there?
I don't know. I imagine about tomorrow noon.
Tomorrow noon. Still time.
Still time? What do you mean?
Huh? Oh, nothing. Never mind. But what did I mean? Still time for what? For Leiningen to flee? Or still time for me to... Even as I rejected the thought with horror, I knew that the fascination of that man was more than I could resist. That Leiningen's flight was drawing my mind, drawing me back toward that plantation and death. I knew past all doubt that I was going back to Leiningen's plantation. I had to. It was 10 o'clock in the morning when I rounded the bend and saw Leiningen's plantation before me. I put into the dock and tied up the launch. Then I saw him standing on the bank above me, arms folded, stubby cigar in his mouth, and a sardonic grin on his face. I made my way up to him.
Back for another warning, Commissioner?
No.
Back to stay a while?
Yes.
Nah,
You don't seem very surprised.
I'm not.
You expected me?
I thought you'd be back. Come along, we'll get some horses. You'll want to ride around the plantation, take a look at the defenses I've rigged up.
Yes, I will want to see the defenses.
And the ants. We'll be getting a glimpse of them before long, I should think.
Yes, and the ants.
Come along, then.
The defenses Leiningen had devised were quite impressive. Surrounding three sides of the plantation like a huge horseshoe was a 12-foot wide ditch. The end of this horseshoe-shaped ditch ran into the river, which formed the fourth side of the plantation. And at the upriver entrance to the ditch, Leiningen had constructed a dam by which river water could be diverted into the ditch. A large hand wheel controlled the floodgate of the dam, and apparently Leiningen had ordered it opened immediately after my arrival. For as we now approached the ditch and rode along it, I could see that it was nearly full.
How do you like my first line of defense, Commissioner?
Well, it's reassuring, like a moat around a castle.
Unless the ants know how to build rafts, they won't reach the plantation. But this is only the outer moat. There's a better one than this. Come along, we'll go up to the high ground where the buildings are and get a view from there.
Leiningen,
What?
I didn't see any women or children around the plantation, or any animals.
Yes, that's right. Move them across the river.
I might have known.
What?
Nothing.
Here we are. There, you see the ditch?
Much smaller than the other.
You've noticed how all the buildings are on this piece of high ground. This inner ditch surrounds them. It's lined with concrete.
But even filled with water, this is no barrier. It's not big enough. Why, if the ants get this far,
They'll get no farther. This ditch wasn't built for water, Commissioner. You see the pipes leading into it? See those storage tanks up on the hill there? Petrol. We can throw up a wall of flame. They won't like that.
Well, I hope you are right. Lannington, look.
Huh?
Over the edge of the jungle, all those animals.
Yes. Running like the wind. Everything from jaguars to monkeys.
Good heavens.
Remember, they don't have any ditches.
But can they escape?
They'll be all right as long as they don't get caught between the river and the ants. They can outrun the crawlers. But if they get trapped, it's either the ants or the crocodiles.
Ugh.
Look! Look, Commissioner! Look, over there on the horizon. There are your ants. Look at them.
It was a sight I will never forget. Over the range of hills as far as I could see crept a darkening hem, ever longer and broader, until the shadows spread across the entire slope, then downward, uncannily swift, and all the green herbage on the entire slope was being mown as by a giant sickle, leaving only the vast moving shadow extending, deepening, and moving rapidly near.
They're a hideous lot, aren't they?
Lannington, we can't last against that. Look at them. Why, they could fill your ditches with their corpses and still have enough to destroy every one of us. We've got to run.
No. They haven't gotten to us yet. They never will.
The hostile army was approaching in perfect formation. No human battalions, however well drilled, could ever hope to rival the precision of that advance. Along the front that moved forward as uniformly as a straight line, the ants drew nearer and nearer to the water ditch. As they approached, two outlying wings of the army detached themselves from the main body and started marching along the sides of the ditch, no doubt expecting at some point to find a crossing. And during this hour-long flanking movement, the main army remained still. Across the scant 12 feet of ditch, I stared at them, and they stared back at me. A solid mass, everyone as big as my thumb, with a reddish-black body and long legs. Suddenly, a sound so unearthly as to freeze our blood jerked our heads in the direction of the jungle on the far side of the ditch. Coming toward the ditch at a stumbling gallop was a stag, covered over and over with ants. Lannington threw up his rifle, and the stag fell lifeless to the ground, its agonies at an end. Horrified as I was, my curiosity impelled me to glance at my watch. I had to know how long the ants would take. After 6 minutes, only the white, polished bones of the stag remained. Lannington and I exchanged glances, and I could see a change in him. Gone was the sporting zest of the novel contest. In its place was a cold, violent purpose to send these vermin back to the hell where they belonged. If he did not, we were both only too sure of the alternative. And now we even knew how long it would take the ants once they got to us. Around 4 in the afternoon, the ant scouts having found no crossing, there was a stirring among the main army. And then an immense flood of ants, a glimmering black cataract, about 100 yards in width, commenced pouring down the far slope of the ditch. Thousands drowned instantly, but the rest began using the bodies as bridges. Lannington immediately swung into action.
Can I help? Get to the dam, open the floodgate more to get the water in the ditch moving faster.
Senor.
This looks like the spot for action. Commissioner.
Yes.
Beginning to see what I was talking about?
What do you mean?
About intelligence being more than a match for anything it tackles. Take the ants. They've got no intelligence. If they had, they'd have attacked along the whole length of the ditch instead of a narrow front like this. They'd have been across by now. There. Too bad for them. I'm not running their campaign for them.
You can joke about it like that with the ants halfway across the ditch?
All right, man. Busy with the shovels now. Dump some sand and clods on them and see how they like that. You with the petrol sprinklers. Start pumping. I don't like it, Commissioner. I don't like it a bit. Look at them.
Yes, but look at the ones on the far side of the ditch. Whole clumps of them rolling into the water. The rest are using them for bridges.
Commissioner, the water's moving faster now.
Tanayo got the floodgates open.
Yes. Look at the ants. They can't hold their own against the current now. They're being washed away. Look at them, Commissioner. The water's carrying them away. We've beat them. We've won out.
It was true. Leiningen had won at least the opening round. The floodgates were left open to forestall any night crossing. I suppose I hoped that the ants would go on, pass us by. But when dawn came, the dark blanket was still there, motionless, across the ditch. Then we noticed a feverish activity on the other side of the plantation. Here a grove of tamarind trees lined the far end of the ditch, and every tree swarmed with the crawling insects. But instead of eating the leaves, they were merely gnawing through the stems so that a thick green shower fell steadily to the ground. Well, it looks as if it's feeding time for our friends, eh?
Yes. Blas.
Senor.
Have all the petrol pumps brought here and get everyone over here except the lookouts on the other side and then pass out the shovels.
Yes, senor.
Looks like I underestimated them when I said they didn't have intelligence.
What do you mean?
I said if they wanted to get across, they'd have to have rafts. That's just what they've got. Those leaves are their rafts.
Even as he spoke, the leaves went tumbling down the far bank by the thousands. The current drew them away from the bank, and each leaf carried several ants.
Don't worry. As long as you keep spraying them and shoveling dirt on the rafts, they can't land.
But there will be too many.
It's true. Look, more leaves in the ditch all the time. Why, they'll have a solid carpet to walk across in a minute.
Not so fast, Commissioner. I've still got a trick up my sleeve for them.
The water! The ditch is drying up.
Of course it's drying up. That's the plan. Those are the orders I sent to the dam.
Are you mad? As soon as it's empty, what's to prevent the ants? Look, the water's way down. It's almost dry. They'll be able to crawl across the bottom.
They'll not make it if the man at the dam carries out his orders. He should have opened the gates again by now.
To flood the ants?
Right.
But what a chance to take. If anything should happen.
Commissioner, here it comes. Here comes the water. Now we'll give the crawlers the ditch a good ride. Out into the river. Look at them. Look at them go.
Leiningen's tactics were successful at first. The violent flow of water at the original depth raced through the ditch, overwhelming leaves and ants and sweeping them along. 3 times the ditch was emptied, 3 times the ants raced across its bottom, and 3 times the rushing water arriving just in time carried them away. But the 4th time, as the water lowered nearly to the bottom of the ditch, we waited in vain for the rushing waters, and then... Senor!
What's the matter? What's gone wrong at the dam?
The ants. Just as the man at the dam lowered the water almost to the bottom, the ants attacked. Before he could open the floodgate, he was almost surrounded. The ants ran, and he ran after them. They are across the ditch. Leiningen stood motionless, absorbing the news of his defeat without a word. Then, simply, he raised his pistol and fired 3 shots into the air. The prearranged signal for all men to retreat instantly to the second line of defense, the concrete ditches more than a mile from the point of invasion. Soon after we arrived there, the natives commenced straggling in silently. Leiningen waited until all of them had gathered. Then he spoke to them.
Well, lads, we won the first round, lost the second. But we'll smash the crawlers yet. Anyone who thinks otherwise can draw his pay and push off. There are rafts enough on the river and plenty of time still to reach them. You stay then. Good. Thank you, lads. And you, Commissioner?
I can't persuade you to give up the fight.
You cannot.
Then I stay too.
Yeah, I knew you.
Senor! A few of the ants have reached the ditch.
They're trying to get across?
No, senor.
I didn't think they would. There's plenty of food out there for them. Crops I've spent 3 years in raising. Or to last them until morning, anyway.
Yes, we were safe for the moment. But the next morning, the black swarm was solid around us, and their shock troops were hard at work. They were dropping shreds of bark and twigs and leaves into the petrol-filled ditches, forming a floating bridge across the surface of the liquid. Leiningen stood silently watching this operation, and I could see a grudging admiration on his face. Then, after several hours, the attack came. Down the ditch they poured, millions of them, and across the bridge of twigs rapidly approached the inner side. Leiningen sat motionless, watching them. Leiningen, for the love of God, don't sit there like a statue. They'll be on us in a moment.
Let them fill it first. Now. All right. Everyone back from the ditch. Blas, hand me the torch. Now we'll see how our friends like a little heat around them.
The flames from the ditch shot up into the air, devouring ants by the millions. But as they returned to the assault time after time, a slow, sickening horror crept into my mind. I looked quickly at Leiningen, then at the petrol tanks. He read my gaze and nodded slowly.
That's right, Commissioner. We could hold them off forever if our supply of petrol was unlimited, but it isn't. We've got only enough to fill the ditch once more.
Leiningen, isn't there any way at all? We've got to do something.
Yes, I know. There must be a way. There must be something on Earth that'll drive this devil's spawn back to the hell they came from. Yes, them. Yes.
What is it?
We'll flood the whole plantation.
Flood? But
The
how?
The river's higher than any point except this high ground we're on now. The river was dammed all the way. It would overflow that stone breakwater and flood the whole plantation. We've got to close the floodgate at the dam. That'll do it.
You're mad. The dam is nearly 2 miles away. 2 miles of ants.
Lads, listen to me. Listen, lads. I'm proud of you. Now there's still a chance. By shutting the floodgates and the dam and flooding the whole plantation from the river. The moment I'm over the ditch, set fire to it. That'll allow time for the flood to wash away the ants. Then all you have to do is wait for me.
This is impossible. You can't get to the dam, let alone get back.
That's where you're wrong, Commissioner. I'll get there and I'll get back. Take care of things while I'm gone.
I watched him as he calmly pulled on high leather boots, drew gauntlets over his hands, and stuffed the spaces between breeches and boots, gauntlets and arms with petrol-soaked rags. He shielded his eyes with close-fitting mosquito goggles and plugged his nostrils and ears with cotton. Then the natives drenched his clothes with petrol. Blas, who acted as doctor to the men, smeared a salve over him. And finally, Leiningen was ready. And as he stood calmly surveying
near the ditch,
course
ready for the run, I realized this was as it should be. I, Leiningen, would meet the ants and defeat them, or be defeated by them. No, Leiningen versus the ants. Yes, it was right that it should be like this. But now there was no more time for thought, only action. I took a deep breath, and then bounded across the ditch and among the ants. I ran in long, equal strides with one thought, one sensation in my being. I must get through. I dodged all trees and shrubs, and except for the split second my soles touched the ground, the ants had no opportunity to alight on me. I ran on. I was halfway to the dam before I felt ants under my clothes and a few on my face. I struck at them mechanically, scarcely conscious of their bites. And the dam drew toward me slowly. The distance grew less and less. Finally, only 100 yards away. Then 50. Then I was there. I gripped the ant-covered wheel, but hardly had I seized it when a horde of ants flowed over my hands and arms. I strained, and slowly the wheel turned. It turned more, and the floodgate was swinging slowly shut, and then it was shut. The water was rising behind the breakwater, closer to the top, closer, and then it was spilling over. The flooding of the plantation had begun. I let go of the wheel. And for the first time, I realized I was coated from head to foot with the fiends. Tongues of fire stabbed at me as they bit into my flesh. I almost lost my head with the pain as I ran, knocking ants from my body, brushing them from my bloody face. And then one bit me just below the rim of my goggles. I managed to tear it away, but the agony of the bite and its venom drilled into the eye nerves. I saw now through circles of fire into a milky mist. I was almost blinded, but I knew that if I tripped and fell... I ran on, my heart pounding as if it would burst, blood roaring in my ears, a giant's fist battering my lungs. And then I could see dimly that wall of flame at the ditch, but it was too far away. I could not last half that distance. I stumbled. I fell. Felt myself being swarmed over, devoured. I tried to rise. A great weight. And then suddenly the vision of the half-devoured stag in my brain. 6 minutes. Then nothing but bones. I couldn't let that happen to me. I couldn't die like that. To my feet. My feet dragged myself forward toward the flame. The ditch. The ring of flame closer down. Only a little farther. 10 steps. 8.
We had waited for hours when all at once through the blazing ring around us, an apparition hurtled and fell full length on the ground. It was Leiningen, alive with ants, unconscious, with glazing eyes and lacerated face. We rushed to him, stripped off his clothes, and tore at the ants that covered him. His body seemed almost one open wound. In one place, I could see a white bone. Later, as the curtain of flame lowered, I looked out where that blanket of ant had been and saw only a vast expanse of water covering the entire plantation and working its way to within a few feet of the concrete ditch. The ants were gone, drowned, and Leiningen had won. Leiningen lay on his bed, his body swathed from head to foot with bandages, but alive.
Everything in order.
They are gone.
I told you I'd come back, even if I am a bit streamlined.
He grinned and shut his eyes. He slept.
Escape is produced and directed by Norman MacDonald, and tonight brought you Leiningen versus the Ants by Carl Stephenson, adapted for radio by Robert Reif, with Bill Conrad as Leiningen and Jay Novello as the commissioner. Music was conceived by Cy Feuer and conducted by Wilbur Hatch. Next week.
You are stealthily stalking into a silent desert fortress, walking into what you know may be a trap. Around you stand a legion of dead men, and over you hangs a menace unseen but felt, a menace from which you cannot escape.
Next week, we escape with Percival Wren's immortal story, Beau Geste. Good night, then, until this same time next week, when once again we offer you Escape. This is CBS, the Columbia Broadcasting System.
Tired out from a strenuous weekend? Get a little too much sunburn? Want to get away from it all?
We offer you Escape.
You are stealthily stalking into a silent desert fortress, walking into what you know may be a trap. Around you stand a legion of dead men. And over you, an unseen menace hangs in the African night.
Escape, designed to free you from the four walls of today for a half hour of high adventure.
Tonight we escape to Africa, to the Sahara, to an earlier day, in one of the greatest adventure mysteries of all time, Percival Christopher Wren's Beau Geste.
The report had been brought to my headquarters in ep042 3 days before, and I'd had the squadron on horse and ready to leave within 10 minutes. We've been on continuous forced march ever since. The Camel Scout had reported that the Zindanov outpost was under attack from a force of at least 2,000 Arabs, and that the tiny garrison had little chance of survival. As we came up to the last crest of sand dunes shutting off our view of the lonely mud fort, I ordered my sergeant major to dismount the men and form skirmish lines, while I rode on ahead to reconnoiter. At the top of the ridge, I reined in my horse and sat staring in amazement. Over the 200 yards of bare sand stretching up to the walls of the fort, nothing moved. There was no sound, no sign of life. The oasis off to my left was deserted. The Arabs were gone, and the tricolor of France still waved overhead. Just then 2 shots of rocket were fired from the fort, and the bullets kicked up spats of dust off to one side of me. I rode in under the walls and stopped in front of the tall wooden gate. I could see now that every gun slit above me was manned by a grim-faced legionnaire, holding his rifle leveled and ready. Congratulations, mes amis! France and I are proud to salute you! Come now! Why so grim? You are victorious! Inform your commandant that a major of the spies awaits his pleasure. Legionnaire! You up there with the pipe in your mouth. Go inform your commandant, you hear me?
Is everything in order, mon commandant?
I'm not sure. Bugler, sound the regimental call.
They do not answer, mon officier.
Believe me, Sergeant, when I get inside this fort...
Look, mon capitaine. The man over the gate, he has been shot in the forehead.
Sacre bleu, you're right, Sergeant. He's dead.
And the one next to him also.
Wait, all along these walls.
They are all dead.
Impossible. Then who fired the shots when I rode up? Sergeant, get a volunteer. Have him climb up the wall and open this gate from the inside.
If you will pardon me, mon commandant.
Yes?
I will volunteer.
Huh? Oh, all right, Bugler, go ahead.
Oui, mon commandant.
Sergeant, this could be a trap. Have the men take open order at 50 yards and wait. And watch the gun slits there along the wall. And wait we did. 5 minutes, 10. The men began to look at one another and to stir uneasily. The fort was silent. Nothing moved. 15 minutes passed. The gate was not opened, and the bugler did not come back. Finally, my sergeant and I climbed the wall ourselves, and we searched the eerie outpost room by room. But we could find no sign of our bugler, nor of any other living soul. The bodies of the entire garrison were on the battle ramp at the top of the wall, their heads and shoulders jammed grotesquely into the gun slits where someone had propped them, while their dead hands clutched the rifles they would never fire again. Only 2 bodies were not so placed. One was that of a light-haired young man who lay peacefully on his back, his hands crossed over the rifle wound in his chest. And the other body?
This one was the commandant. See, he wears a gold star.
So he does, Sergeant. But he also wears a French bayonet in his heart. He was murdered by one of his own men.
Rifles fired from an empty fort. The bugler has disappeared. I do not like this place.
How in the name of heaven did they stab him? His revolver is still in his right hand. And in the other... scrap of paper.
Perhaps the paper explains all of this, eh?
Perhaps. To the High Commissioner of Scotland Yard, I hereby confess fully and freely that I, and I alone, stole the great sapphire known as Blue Water. Signed Beaugeste. What's this all about? What does this mean?
Mon commandant, these things are impossible, but they have happened. They do not make sense. Why do we not go outside?
Well, this was not to be the end of it. Shortly after dark, a tongue of flame flared suddenly in the heart of the silent fort. And in a matter of moments, the whole interior was ablaze, throwing a great pillar of fire up into the black desert night. We sat and watched it burn. There was nothing else to do. And as I stared at the leaping flames, kindled by some unseen and unknown hand, I realized suddenly that neither I nor any man alive would ever know what strange things had really happened here at the lonely fort of Zinterneuf.
My name is John Geste, and I am the only person alive who knows all that happened at Zinterneuf. My two brothers and I grew up at Brandon Abbas, south of London. Beau was the oldest, then Digby, and finally myself, 2 years younger. I can remember very little of those days as I look back, except that we were happy, as only young boys can be. We read thrilling tales of the French Foreign Legion, sailed toy boats on the Pound, and gave flaming Viking funerals for the tin soldiers who fell in our battles, burning them on funeral pyres of kindling wood, with toy dogs and horses at their feet, while Digby blew taps on his trumpet. Our only queen was cool and lovely Aunt Patricia, with whom we lived. Her husband, Sir Hector, was seldom in England, and if the hurt in Aunt Patricia's eyes grew deeper with the years, while the great estate fell slowly into ruin, then we children knew nothing of it. There were the two girls, of course, our cousins. Only girls didn't count at that age. But those days are far away now, and gone forever. And I can remember clearly only that one last night when the three of us came home from Oxford. Our cousins were there, and we were all together for the holidays. It was on that night the story of Zinterneuf really began. We'd finished dinner and played games for a while. Now we just sat in the library talking. Gradually, our attention became focused more and more on the small black satin box, standing in the center of the table.
Please, Aunt Patricia, can't we open the case now and look at it? You've had it sitting there for half an hour.
Well, Claudia, dear, I thought you always liked to draw out the suspense as long as possible.
Well, it's been long enough.
I must say I agree with her, Aunt Patricia.
Why, Beau, you do?
I'm afraid so. Come on, let's have our semi-annual look at the family jewel, shall we?
Oh, well, all right then.
I should have my trumpet and blow a fanfare. That's right.
There we are.
Oh.
Ladies and gentlemen, one of the 6 largest and most perfect sapphires in the world, the Blue Water.
Oh, it's beautiful.
Rather, and I've seen it half a dozen times a year all my life.
Go ahead, Claudia. Pick it up.
Oh, no. It's nice to look at, Beau, but when you touch it, it always feels cold.
What about you, John? Would you like to juggle a stone worth 50,000 pounds?
I think I'll just look for a while, Dig. After all,
The lights.
what's happened to the
Oh,
lights?
it must be a fuse. Burden will have them put back on again in a minute.
Please, don't move about and bump into things. I'm quite sure everything will be all right in a moment.
Sort of ghostly. Makes you think of skeleton hands and cobwebs.
Oh, don't be afraid, Claudia. You're among friends, you know.
I could swear I felt something touch me.
I can't understand why Burden does...
Oh.
Oh, there we are.
Ah, not a soul got lost in the dark. We're probably
Aunt
all
Patricia, look.
Please, ladies and gentlemen, and I think all of us are, who decided to play this joke?
The sapphire's gone. The next hour became a nightmare. None of us present would admit having taken the sapphire. And if the thing had been done as a joke, then already it had been carried too far. Aunt Patricia went to bed finally, telling us that the library would be left open all night, so the prankster, she was not using the word thief, could return the blue water to its case in secret. The rest of us drifted off to our rooms. And an hour before midnight, Digby came in to tell me quietly that our brother Beau had packed a bag and left Brandon Abbas. I turned out my light and sat there in the darkness, listening to the ticking of the clock. I was not surprised when 2 hours after midnight, I heard a sound below my window. I looked out to see Digby slipping off down the drive. I was fairly certain that neither of my brothers had stolen the sapphire, but I understood what they were doing. Gallant as always, Beau had run away to draw suspicion from those innocent ones who might be hurt, and Digby had followed in order to split up the search for Beau. I could only guess where they'd gone, but long before dawn, I decided where I must go and what I had to do. And so it was that 5 days later, I walked into the Fort Thérèse, into the recruit barracks of the French Foreign Legion in Algeria.
And if they refer to this cattle barn as a barracks, heaven knows what the output...
Digby, look who just came in the door.
Good Lord, Beau. It's John.
Hey, John.
Hey, youngster, come here.
Digby.
Beau.
Hello.
I'd have wagered 10 to 1 I'd find you in the Legion.
You brainless young idiot. Both of you.
Why? What's wrong, Beau?
Oh, Beau wanted to be the only noble one in the family, John. Pay no attention to him.
Well, there was no need for all of us running away. After all, I stole the blue water.
Don't try to say how you could have, Beau, since I brought it with me. Had a deuce of a time getting it through customs.
Oh, you did you?
Now, look, you two. I've had that sapphire all the time. And if either of you would like to take a look at it...
I wonder who did steal it.
What's the difference? It's driven all three of us into the Foreign Legion now. And we're in for 5 years, whether we like it or not.
Fine. What do we do?
Well, we haven't done anything yet. It's supposed to be some kind of an inspection any minute.
You know, you shouldn't have come, either of you. But, well, I'm glad you're both here.
Thanks, Beau. So am I.
I can't say exactly what we're in for, lads, but we're in it together.
Attention! Oh, Lord.
Well, I think we're supposed to stand up.
What is it, a man or a gorilla?
I think it's Sergeant Lejeune. The other men say he's a killer.
Hold down there, my dirty little dogs. Three sniveling little purse snatchers if I ever saw one.
Oh, I say now.
Shut up! One more remark, and I will be most happy to kick your teeth out of your head. Put out your hands, all three of you. Palms up! Never done a day's work in your lives. Well, we are going to change all that, my little pigs. Sacre bleu, if we are not going to change it, I shall march you through the sand until you drop on your faces. When that happens, I shall kick you until you get up or die. If you choose to die, perhaps I shall go on kicking you after you are dead. You are in the Legion now, my little dogs, and I shall give you cause to know it. You will curse Sergeant Lejeune 10,000 times if you live long enough. And each time, you will wish you had stayed in England to be hanged, as you no doubt properly should. Is all of that perfectly clear?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Well, that is much better. Recruits, report in full kit to the parade ground in 10 minutes. Meanwhile, fall out and clean up this pigsty. Dismiss.
If anybody want him, I'll sell my share.
Are we in for 5 years of that? He's not even human.
Well, he's part of the Legion, lads, and after all, they didn't ask us to come over here and join, did they?
If you will pardon me, gentlemen, I would like to take the liberty of introducing myself. Francisco Blondin at your service.
Well, we're the Smith brothers, Monsieur Blondin. Beau there, John, and I'm Digby.
This is my third enlistment with the Legion, so I know what I am saying. And I can tell you, mes enfants, you have started off on the wrong foot. You should not have antagonized him.
Well, how did we antagonize the good sergeant, Monsieur Blondin?
Well, who knows? Perhaps your hands were too clean, but no matter. For now, you have Francisco Blondin as your advisor.
We are honored.
I stand in very well with Sergeant Lejeune. There are reasons. And I have other contacts, too. I know all the ins and outs of this business, and I can be most useful to anyone who has something very valuable to hide. These men here, they are all thieves, of course.
Oh, good heavens, not really.
There is no time to talk now. But after drill, we will meet in the canteen for a bottle of wine, and I think we shall become very good friends. Au revoir, mes amis.
What? Well, chaps, I can't quite see Mr. Oily as one of our close friends. He overheard us talking about the sapphire, of course.
Well, between him and Sergeant Lejeune.
Hey, signori, pay no attention to me. Pretend I'm only polishing this boot, eh? But listen carefully.
Yes?
Do not trust that man Blondin. He's a thief, a liar. He's a little bloodhound who works for Sergeant Lejeune. When you wish to know something, you come to me. Juan Tayo. I will take good care of you, eh?
I'll bet you would at that.
Soon we find a chance to talk. I, Juan Tayo, will fix everything. Do not let anyone steal it, huh? I go now. You be very careful.
Well, along with Lejeune, we now have a bunch of thieves who'll probably try to steal the sapphire. Ho-ho. Come along, lads. Let's find out how they march in the Legion.
And march we did, hours in the growling sun and the dust, day after day, and we wondered how much worse it would be on the desert. We grew hard and tough, and we learned the ways of the Legion and the ways of the Legionnaires. Some we liked, and some we hated. But either way, we learned to live with them, talk with them, drink with them. We became soldiers, legionnaires. We longed for active duty, and we got it, even sooner than we hoped.
Rendezvous! Défilé par fil de côte! And Evan! March!
We marched out of Sidi Belabes to the south, and we learned how beastly cruel the desert is. Le cafard broke out the second week, that madness that comes when the brain is cooked by the sun, and men became gibbering idiots and died. At Togur, some of the men were detached and sent to Tokotu for cavalry training. Among them my brother Digby, and the rest of us marched on. 2 days later, our commandant went mad and shot himself, and the detachment's command passed to Sergeant Lejeune. On southward we marched to the last southern outpost, straight into the mouth of hell, the fort at Zindeneuf. If we'd hoped for action, we didn't find it at Zindeneuf. Day after day went by with no sight of the Arab forces, nothing but eternal sentry duty, and each dull day was like the one before. In full command now, Lejeune became more brutal than ever, and the men glowered and growled into their breath and whispered together in small groups. In a month, the fort was seething under the surface with madness, hate, and even worse. Off duty for the moment, Beau and I were sitting at the oasis and talking one afternoon, but we heard someone coming toward us across the sand.
Uh-oh. Hold on to your watch, Johnny. Here comes that little weasel Guantayo.
Buonasera, signori. You haven't seen no one around, huh?
Not a soul, my little puppy. Goodbye.
No. I must talk with you. You should know what is going to happen.
It must be good. It couldn't be any worse.
You, of course, know the legionnaire named Schwartz, the one who was once a butcher?
I know him. What about him?
Perhaps he's going to become a butcher again very soon, signori. Perhaps he's going to kill a pig.
There are no pigs here.
Oh, but there is one, a great fat pig, a real commandante of a pig.
Lejeune.
I did not say that.
Mutiny, huh? It may take a lot of butchers to kill that pig.
There are a lot of butchers, but for you two, the question is whether to be pigs or butchers, huh?
We shouldn't like to be butchered, of course, but neither would we like to be eaten by the pig.
It's very difficult, but you must decide. It will happen soon.
Suppose the butchers did kill the pig and started across the desert. They'd be dead in 3 days, of thirst or from the Arabs.
One must take chances. Besides, this Lejeune, he plans to kill you for the great jewel which you have. I heard him tell Blondin.
I see. Well, we'll let you know, Guantayo.
Decide quickly if you wish to live. I must go now. Say nothing to anyone.
Beau? Rather think we're going to die, one way or another. Glad Digby's out of it.
So am I. Well, we'll wait and see what happens, shall we?
But we were not forced to wait any longer than that same night. I was awakened an hour before dawn by someone whispering in my ear. It was Lejeune, and he held a pistol in his hand.
If you make one sound, I shall blow your brains out. Follow me.
I followed him quietly out of the barrack room with its rows of sleeping men, and we stood beside the oil lamp that burned in the caserne.
I've been informed of a plot to mutiny, and I've been told that you and your brother have not joined it. I'm going to nip that little scheme in the bud. Do you understand?
Yes, sir.
Eh bien. You will go back in there and wake your brother while I keep you covered from the door. I have 2 rifles here. Your brother will take one of them and kill any man who tries to leave his bed. You will take the other and come with me. We are going to disarm the guard.
Whatever you say, mon commandant.
Va bien. Come on.
We left Beau on guard at the barrack room door and made our way through the sleeping fort, up the ladder to the battle ramp.
Everything is very quiet up here, mon commandant. I have just ordered the sentry into the guardhouse, and the arsenal is locked.
Bien, bien. Go down to the guardhouse and take their guns. Tell them 2 rifles are covering the door, and any man who steps into the light will be shot.
Oui, mon commandant. Portez-vous bien.
We stood there on the ramp, our rifles aimed at the square of light in the doorway, and we waited. I watched the first grey light of dawn filter over the walls and wondered if Lejeune was going to get away with it. I was given no chance to find out. Lejeune, look! Outside the fort!
Arabs, thousands! Sacre nom du cochon. We are under attack. Blondin, turn out the guard, open the arsenal, and pass out the guns. Bugler, sound us arms! Look at the little pigs out there, sacre bleu, but they'll find before they're done. It's Lejeune they're fighting. Come on, soldier! Fire that gun!
The men streamed up the ladders onto the ramp, loading their rifles as they ran. They were soldiers, first and last, legionnaires, and in the face of battle, all thoughts of the mutiny were swept aside. Through the whole of that long, hot day, we fought the Arab mob, met their fierce charges, reloaded smoking guns, and fought them off again. All through the night, the snipers crept in close and poured deadly fire into the gun slits. And slowly but surely, our tiny garrison melted away. Lejeune was everywhere, cursing and firing his pistol, grabbing bodies as they fell and jamming them back into the ramparts, so the Arabs could have no way of knowing how few we were. As the ghastly night drew to a close, only 4 of us were left, Beau and I, Lejeune and Blondin. And before dawn, Blondin was gone. And then, as the first red rays of the sun swept over the sand... Beau! Beau!
Never mind, soldier. Get below and bring up a pail of soup. The devil seemed to be letting up for the moment.
But my brother, perhaps he's only wounded.
I said get below. I'll take care of him.
I propped my rifle against the wall and went down the ladder. At the bottom, I stopped suddenly. Lejeune would take care of him. He was not going to take care of Beau the way he did the others, by making a grotesque dummy out of his dead body. I climbed back up to the ramp. Lejeune was bending over Beau's body. He'd torn open his tunic and was poring over some papers he'd taken from it.
Huh? I thought I sent you below.
You beastly thief! Take your filthy hands off!
Where you are! There is no reason why I should not shoot you. You have disobeyed orders. I have no need of you now. I sent off a runner when I heard of the mutiny. There should be a relief force here in an hour or 2. Perhaps 2 or 3 bullets in the stomach would be...
Johnny! I've got his ankle, Johnny. Take him.
I plunged forward, whipping my bayonet out of its scabbard, and I drove it into his hand.
Nice work, Johnny. I'm glad I could help.
Oh, Beau, then you're all right. You weren't dead.
That's what you think, youngster. Deliver those letters. Be sure the confession's made. Public. Be sure. Be sure.
Beau! I gathered up the letters, closed his eyes, crossed his hands over his chest. There's nothing else to do. Then I filled a knapsack with bread, water, and ammunition, prepared to slip out of the dead fort. At that moment, an officer on the relief force rode over the ridge to the north. I wasn't sure whether the Arabs were still in ambush, so I fired 2 shots to warn him, then slid over the wall on the far side and sprinted for the nearest sand dune 100 yards away. I must have dropped there and fallen asleep immediately. When I woke up, it was dark, and the moon was just rising behind the black walls of the fort. And even as I watched it, a tongue of flame shot up, and in a moment the whole interior of the fort was ablaze. But why? Why was the relief force burning Saint-Denis? Just then the figure of a man slid over the wall nearest me and came running in my direction. I raised my rifle. Halt, you're covered!
Huh? Oh, hello, old boy. I thought you'd be out here somewhere.
Digby, how did you get here?
I was bugler with the relief force, Johnny. They sent me to open the gate. I hid instead. Things are pretty rough.
Fairly so. Digby, they killed Bo.
Yes, I know. I saw it.
Did you start the fire?
Bo always wanted a Viking funeral. I had to give it to him, you know.
Yes, I remember.
I piled all the furniture together and I covered it with sheets, poured lamp oil around. It was the best I could do.
He'd have liked it, Digby.
I didn't have a horse or a spear, but I did find a dog to burn at his feet.
A dog?
Yes, Johnny. A dirty, rotten dog I found on the battle ramp. It used to call itself Le Jeune.
What came afterwards, how we fled southward for many weary miles across the desert, fought bandits, starved and thirsted. All those things matter very little now. It suffices to say that the day did come when I sat once again in the great library at Brandon Nevis, in the same room where it all began on that other night, long before. And I told the story to Aunt Patricia.
Oh, it was all so completely horrible and so useless, John. Why did Bo steal the sapphire? Why did he have to do such a thing?
I couldn't say, Aunt Patricia.
So useless.
I have a letter here that he left for you. I haven't opened it, of course.
Please do so at once, John.
Very well.
Read it to me.
He says, "My beloved Aunt Patricia, if I may still call you that.
Bo.
When you read this, I should be dead. I took the blue water, of course, or rather the imitation which you had made after you sold the real stone. Oh, yes, Aunt. I knew about that. You wanted the money for the tenants on the estate. I approve. But I also knew how much you feared Sir Hector would find out. I thought that stealing it might help you. If I was wrong, I only hope that you may forgive me.
Oh, dearest Bo.
For my part, I remain affectionately as always, your own Beau Geste.
Escape is produced and directed by Norman MacDonald, and tonight brought you Beau Geste by P.C. Wren, adapted for radio by Les Crutchfield, featuring Barry Kroger, Wilms Herbert, Jay Novello, and Ben Wright, with Ramsey Hill, Lillian Bayef, and Peggy Weber. Music was conceived by Lucien Morawek and conducted by Wilbur Hatch. Roy Rowan speaking. This is CBS, the Columbia Broadcasting System.